Welcome, everyone, to a momentous evening for several reasons. This is the 400th number of the series. So welcome to number 400 of the It's About Time Writers Reading Series. It's also a big week in Seattle as the AWP has convened here. I understand there are anywhere from 6,000 to 9,000 attendees and over 200 offsite readings. So let's count ourselves as one of those and know that you've been part of the biggest gathering of writers in Seattle since before the pandemic. Big welcome. Our readers tonight are Marta Sanchez, Ade, I'm going to goof your name, Ajayi, and Stephanie Sahanow. We will have right now 3 different people have expressed interest in the 3-minute open mic. If you're not familiar with It's About Time, I'm just delighted to have new people here and able to introduce you to what is one of the friendliest places to read. It was founded in 1990 by Esther Helfgott and is dedicated to the memory of her mother, Anna Helfgott, who began writing at age 70, and also dedicated to the memory of Nelson Bentley, the quintessential teacher who gave Anna and scores of others help and hope. It's About Time is dedicated to an end of racism, homophobia, anti-Semitism, homelessness, and war. Welcome to our March 9th reading. So as I mentioned, our first reader tonight will be Marta Sanchez. I'm delighted to hear Marta for the first time. She describes herself very simply as a Seattle resident with eyes cast abroad. As the pandemic entered, her fingers gripped her pen. Slowly words dripped like a cheap pen, forming poems and stories. And it's also her first time reading with It's About Time. So big welcome, Marta.
Some of you may know Kelly Boyker Guyamet. She passed away recently. She was a very strong writer. She had a way of making the grotesque, lyrical, beautiful, haunting, doesn't come close to describing it. And I'm going to start reading one of my poems, reading one of her poems. Kiss me red. Kiss me, kiss me, kiss me red. His corpse said, kiss me red. Corpse hissed, kiss me dead. I bit hard into decay, then I jerked my face away. Blood, his mouth was full of blood. Love, his eyes were brimmed with love. Red, 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 it makes him stiff. Red, 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 I am inside. Red, 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 it trickled down my thighs. He came crawling up to me. He was reaching for my knee, and he was rotten as a corpse. And I was sickened, gagging on remorse. Kiss me, kiss me, kiss me red. Red is running from my eyes. Red, 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 it is pouring from the skies. He was sad and he was dead and he was mumbling my name. Kiss me, kiss me, kiss me red, and I will kiss you back the same. And he smeared his red on me, and I gagged and then broke free. And he stood still and let me be. And he smiled blood teeth as I fled. For yes, 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 he made me red, red, red. He kissed me red. That was Kelly's. Yeah. Okay, now is my work. Citing. I see you. Surprise. The corners of my mouth lift. Happiness. Does Gio know? No, not you. Waiting for my coffee, I still glances. Brain muddled, still questioning. What are you doing at Inner Bay? Long brown tresses frame your pale face. Did she iron out the curls? Green thick, not quite bulky enough sweater. Is she a never nude too? Clickety clack on her laptop. Is she writing a poem? Pausing for a sip, I replace the mug with a wine glass filled with red. Real, reality, unkind, cruel, trickery. My magic isn't strong enough. A tornado of stones descends into my gut, wishing you were here, even for one more day. I started writing with Ade during the pandemic, and Ade's an amazing short story writer, and I dabble. So here we go. And mine are more like shorts. Glancing at her children, they were tucked into their cereal bowls. She sank down between, grabbing the top of each head and stuck their faces into the bowl. Laughing, her foot slipped on a spill of olive oil left over from dinner, splat on her butt. Each child, bowls, milk, and soggy cereal landed with her on the floor. Laughing, the three of them tickled each other. Then the two rugrats locked eyes and piled on Mom. Mommy, what are you doing? They said in unison. Sometimes, children, you don't cry over spilled milk. They, at her tummy, grinned, looking up, screaming, the glass is refillable. That's right. It's not half empty. It's not half full. Don't buy into that crap when they try and teach it to you. Now, little ducks, whose feet has the least amount of oil and milk on them? All three laugh, checking the bottom of each other's feet. Okay, Christopher, this is your mission, if you choose to accept it. Christopher grinned. I do. Clarissa chimed in. Dun, 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 dun. Listen closely. Can you get to the towel roll and back, remembering to lay a sheet down, step, lay a sheet down, step? Carefully, Christopher stood, looking, placing each foot. I got them. Yay! Clarissa jumped up and fell and slipped on her bottom, bouncing on her butt. They all laughed again. This breakfast would go down in history. Little did she know, the twins were making a new game of sorts, a family trivia. How many times did Mom say, fuck the morning of the oil escapade? The teens laughed, remembering that morning. Oh, you two, I swear. Yes, you do, Mom, the twins said in unison. It was going to be a long game night. And then during the pandemic, I'm sure I've experienced a lot of what other people experience. This is titled Hollow. 1, I no longer walk streets lined with homes, flowers, gardens, and planting strips. Inner voice disquiet. Your loneliness goes with you. 2, yes, I welcome it. Swing the door wide. No longer in the shadows, false smiles gone. I crave a beachfront abode where it pours my coffee each morning, leads me in the sama each night, sings from my gut, fills buckets for sandcastles, crashes over me in waves till my heart scream wails, releasing 50 years of solitude, empty. La Llorona shudders. My yarns unpacked. Needles took along, knit crystallized tears, pearl empty embraces, knit dinners for one, yarn over comforting stores, knit together two, two, longing, the salty sweat of flesh, the shawl weft covers me. 3 or 4, you entered, plucking a loose thread, the unraveling begins. Your fingernails intent or not, scratch, etch. I beg for armor. Snip the stray strand, backing into a hollow earth, eyes avert, focus, tie the loose thread. His hand reaches. And we're closing in on April. Thank you. We're closing in on April for National Poetry Month. I guess not closing in, but it's coming. And I don't know if anyone is still doing the postcards where you send postcards for 30 days to people you don't know. If you have that information, please pass it along to me. I would love that. This is from there. Fountains. Fountain. Small babe sleeps, mouth searches for an elusive nipple. Legs cycle furiously, trying to catch it, arms lash out, fighting. The pink blanket forced around her. Still, she runs, finally free. A still moment. Lower limbs start again. Dreams of mother milk's waterfall, creamy white pools afloat in a giant pacifier, kicking her way to the land of overflowing peaks. Okay, and this is my last piece. It is another short, and it's my favorite one. So, and it doesn't have a title yet. It's a beautiful wedding dress. Perfect fit, moves with me. I just need higher heels. Reaching my right arm up a little higher with the duster. Gotcha, you sneaky spider. Oh, not on me, flicking it off the lace bodice. Sliding over to the sink, scrubbing the pot, thinking aloud. It was 2 months since I had it cleaned at the Martinez shop on 3rd. The Smith's cleaner was before that. I know Snohomish is having a wine festival. I can make a day of it. No one there knows me. I mean, just because I'm single and 35, what, I don't get to have a stunning gown? Yes, it was worth it. Camping overnight at Victoria's basement. Sure, the plane fare and hotel costs, but wasn't that part of the experience? I have a real Alexander McQueen for $300. And how many people get to say they were married in a McQueen? Okay, yes, technically not married, and there's several, but how many people can say they dusted, mopped, scrubbed pots and pans, went grocery shopping in a McQueen? Clearly, people never knew the high-end designers know how to make an event wear fashionable daily attire. I can bring home the pancetta, wrap it around the asparagus, and never, never let forget that I'm amazing. Yeah. Not crap. Hold on a minute. I'm coming. Who's here? Keys jingle. Hold on, I'll get the door. Please don't use your key. Hi. Hey. Hi. Yes. You know how you say you love my quirkiness? Don't panic. Your eyes are glassing over. Rich, I promise this dress has nothing to do with you. Honey, seriously, give me that bag before you drop it. Come on now, fuck the patriarchy. We know that matrimony is just some social construct bullshit by the patriarch. Grabbing his hand. Come on, let's sit down on the couch. Okay, where to start? You know, Alyssa, you like Alyssa and Brian, right? Where there was a time many years ago when Alyssa and Christy and Shannon, all my girlfriends were getting married in a very short time. We all went on this bride-to-be excursion, and they didn't want me to feel left out, so they made me try on like 976 dresses. And then I saw it. It was at the bottom of this discount bin, standing up. Look, honey, look, isn't it beautiful? Rich? Rich? Okay, that's it. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed being here. Thank you, Peggy, for the opportunity.
I love it. It's like, better put down that bag of groceries. Thank you so much, Marta. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's see. Carol, our first open mic.
Peggy, mine goes 4 minutes. Can I have an extra minute?
You
I'm
can have
so
a minute. Okay, you got it.
I hate this. Alice's revenge. The meeting was already in session. A little round woman just inside the door looked up, whispered, "Alice," and pointed to a chair. Members were going around the room, each outdoing their predecessor with a graphic description of a literary murder. The stabbing from Gone Girl, bludgeonings from Dostoevsky and Roddy Doyle, both of Iago's poisonings. The listeners laughed and clapped after each offering. This was absurd. Alice had done her due diligence, of course, read all the group's postings on authorsclub.com before she'd contacted them. She knew they shared the same obsession, revenge against Jane Chestnut Strauss, the sadistic editor who had massacred her dreams of becoming a novelist. But really, premeditated murder? Let's get serious, Alice said, addressing the putative leader of the ragtag group as a tall woman in flowing purple seemed to be. I, for one, could never be a part of any of these schemes. Morals aside, we'd all go to jail. The group was silent. I'm a lawyer, Alice said. I know no lethal critique could justify bloodshed. The little round woman smiled. A lawyer? Could you represent us? The rest guffawed. Now Alice was angry. No, I can't get you off for homicide, she said. I thought this was a serious group. That editor destroyed me. I can't write a word. Maybe you weren't meant to write, the young man with brown hair curling over his collar said. Anyone will tell you if you can do anything else, don't be a writer. You'd be much better off practicing law. What an asshole, Alice thought, although he was actually very good looking. Insufferable and way too young. She picked lint off her skirt and flicked it away. Writing is by nature suffering, said a woman in a worn leather jacket. I want a pushcart for a story about the anguish I endured at the hands of our Jane Chestnut Strauss. Alice tilted her head. You write short stories, not novels. It's different. Not everyone has the chops to write an entire book. This group has been going for 8 years, interrupted another woman in a print dress and earth shoes. Alice would have dismissed her too had it not been for her French accent. She said directly to the print dress, what are we doing here unless it's to concoct a revenge scream? This is a writer's group. Didn't you read the materials I sent you? This little round person was Beatrice, the leader? Alice looked at her with new respect and embarrassment. She should have read the attachments. We were pulled together by our dreams of retribution, but now we meet to exchange ideas, to read our work. Talk of executions just gets us going. Alice crossed her arms. Sorry, I want her writhing in agony. This is the wrong group. The young man looked at Alice with understanding. The only cure for not being able to write is to write. God, talk about cliches. She noticed his jeans had bunched up a little, revealing a slice of bare leg. An old man in a flannel shirt pulled out a notebook from his canvas bag and read, "Who is more to be pitied, a writer bound and gagged by policemen or one living in perfect freedom who has nothing more to say?" That's from Kurt Vonnegut. Beatrice put her hand over Alice's. An Asian woman read this, "When I got writer's block, I masturbated." That's Takeko. Beatrice removed her hand. Alice looked at her watch. The woman in purple leaned towards Alice and in a scolding voice read from a tortured scrap of paper, "Writing about writer's block is better than not writing at all. Charles Bukowski." Beatrice held up her hand and the group quieted. As you know, my favorite is Saul Bellow, who tells us how to use unhappiness. Chain it like a dog, harness it like Niagara Falls to generate light and supply voltage for electric chairs. She looked around the room and nodded. And then they all said at once in what Alice would come to discover over the years was the group's mantra. Write it right, write it wrong, but write it. And then in a loud chant, "Write on!" Beatrice said, okay, let's get started. Who wants to read tonight? Alice was annoyed, but what about my revenge? Everyone smiled. Several shook their heads. Beatrice looked at Alice with so much empathy, Alice felt she might cry. Oh, my dear, writing is your revenge. That's it.
Thank you, Carol. Perfect for the AWP weekend, don't you think?
And the humor theme of the group. Thank you very much.
There you go. Thank you. Okay, our next featured reader tonight is Ade.
Hello.
Hello. So before I introduce you, let them know where you are. You're in Texas, correct?
I'm in Dallas, yes.
In Dallas. There you go. You see, we're just expanding our horizons. So I'm delighted to have been introduced to Ade. Marta had been writing with her and suggested her. She was available tonight to join us. She's a writer, storyteller, stand-up comedian, and producer. She enjoys writing that have a bit of humor. She produces monthly comedy shows in Dallas and is a youth improv instructor. You can also catch her every week on her podcast, TV Told Me, as she tells life stories and gives reviews of movies and television she enjoys with her friend Kelly, which I did check out, by the way. So thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. So I normally write on things that I see. So I saw this picture and I put it in the chat of this little girl with a green dress in front of a green plant. And I wrote this first story based on her. She could feel her heart beating like it was going to push its way through her chest. It was so loud she heard it in her ears and her whole body tingled as though it was ready to lose a vital organ. She only felt her heart beat this fast when she raced her cousins at full speed, giving all that she could and leaving nothing behind. But even then, it didn't feel like this. This was something else. This was painful. As she stood, her heart beating as fast and as strong as it could, a single tear fell from her eye. She wanted to wipe it away, but she couldn't move. Goodness, had she died? Had she died and because she was still standing, not notice? Did other people not know they were watching death occur in front of their eyes? The way that they did not see her and looked past her, she wondered if when she fell, if they would acknowledge it or continued as they did now and just walk around her. The thought made her smile, and that smile made her chuckle to herself. Feeling her face move, she knew she was alive still. She wiped her tear and made her way to the bathroom. When she opened the door to the bathroom, it was full of mirrors. No matter where she looked, there she was. The tears came quickly then. Why, she wasn't sure. She wasn't even sure why she never looked at herself. Some people spent hours looking at themselves, loving themselves, changing themselves. But for her, she avoided herself. No one had ever mentioned her looks except her eyes. Everyone had always spoken about how her eyes were big. Could she see better because they were bigger? Could she pop them out? She was never offended. She was always mesmerized. That adults would ask these questions of a child as though they didn't know how eyes worked. She again chuckled to herself and then stood fully in front of one of the mirrors and really looked at her face. It took a moment and some moving her head side to side to realize that the image looking back at her was her. She blinked and she put her hand to her cheek and then her lips. She smiled, she frowned, she did a dramatic fake laugh. Yeah, this was her. She touched the mirror and felt cold glass, and then she touched her cheek where the tear stains were, and she felt warmth. In that warmth, she was quickly transported to her grandmother's house and the cocoa butter her grandma used to put on her face. She could hear the giggles they both shared after bath time. She smiled then so big and she tried to ease it, but the smile wouldn't let itself minimize. So she laughed again. And again, she knew she was real, that she was alive. She grabbed a towel and washed the tears from her face. Her eyes in that moment were captivating to her. She had no worries of what others thought because they were hers. Her skin was also hers. And in that moment, without even thinking about it, she heard her mother's voice. Your skin is not like dirt, she said. Your skin is like soil. And soil should never pay attention to those who do not know the difference. Dirt messes up things around it. It takes away the cleanliness. But soil Soil, my love, is the beginning of everything. It's the beginning of life, the source of all food and things that matter in this world. Soil is nurturing, loving, and a blessing to behold. Your skin is soil. You are soil. You're the beginning of everything. She stood straighter and looked again deep in the mirror, and she finally noticed her green dress. It was the kind of green that draws you to it. In the store, she was pulled to it like a magic charm floated above it. When she tried it on, it was the perfect fit. The kind of fit that you didn't need anyone to tell you about, but a fit that was made just for you. She was in the dressing room for so long, her mother knocked on the door to ask if she was okay. When she opened the door, she first saw her mother smile, and it made her float. And soon the other ladies said, "Wow, you look so beautiful." She had her own red carpet right there in Macy's. Her mother loved it so much, she couldn't help but buy things to go with it. She accessorized it that day. They bought little pearl earrings and lace gloves and white bows for her hair and a little white purse. And when her grandma came to visit later that night, there was no hesitation. The girl put on the full outfit, full accessories, and the oohs and ahs she got from her family made it hard for her to sleep that night. A month after buying the dress, she was invited to a birthday party at a beautiful hotel where they would have high tea. She wasn't exactly sure why she was invited or what high tea was, but she felt she had to go, even though she didn't think she would fit in. She stood in the lobby for 10 minutes, but she couldn't move. She was so accustomed to playing in the background and blending in as to not disturb. But this dress, however, this dress stood out, and therefore today she would as well. And that was when her heart started beating and she had gone to the restroom. She looked again in the mirror and she smiled because she could fully see herself. She saw it all, and it was a sight to behold. She did not need to be affirmed by anyone, and she knew in that moment she was amazing. As the thought occurred, the bathroom door opened and two chic ladies walked inside. "Oh my goodness, you are gorgeous," they said. "Those gloves and bows." She was so happy all she could do was smile, and it turned into a little laugh because the smile could not hold. She excused herself and felt like she had grown 3 feet. She walked down the hallway and all the people smiled and said hello. She turned the corner to the party and stood for a moment in front of the plants. She looked at the party. Her heart was no longer beating. Her eyes were no longer observing. She was fully present, fully herself, and she walked down the stairs to make her entrance. Cool. I don't have a picture of the next one because it's just hanging in my room. But it's a picture of a man with his face tilted upwards with plants with flowers in his afro. And this one is called "The Man in the Sun." The sun warmed him on the inside out on days like today. He felt it from his heart, and it moved slowly from his chest to his shoulders to the top of his head. He felt the heat on his head, and it contrasted the coolness of the grass between his toes and on the bottom of his feet. The whole process felt like his body was unfolding, awakening, or something he couldn't name. This moment was just good. He closed his eyes and lifted his head to the sun. Though his eyes were still closed, he could see the sun. It penetrated through his eyelids to let him know he was not alone in this moment. He lingered in the moment and opened his eyes to see the clouds passing across the sky. The wind gently touched his ears, and he realized he had no thoughts in this moment. He looked down and saw beautiful flowers all around him. He was not well versed enough to give them names, but even the ones he knew were weeds, held special beauty in this moment. He decided to lay in their beauty, and he felt the coolness on his back. He picked the flowers and added them one by one to his fro. For a moment, he thought, "I hope no one sees me." But he quickly let go of that thought. Why mess up this moment? He closed his eyes again and smiled without even knowing what he was doing. "Darius." The sound of his name caused him to jolt with an immediate sense of fear. "Darius, where are you?" The rush of blood felt cold and tingly. Every hair on his body was on full alert. "I'm here," he said, running towards the voice. He pulled the flowers out of his hair as he ran. He patted his hair to make sure he missed nothing. When he turned the corner, he saw his father on the porch with a stern look on his face. "Darius, where were you?" His father's voice had a bass that seemed to shake the earth around him. Darius's mind went blank and he said nothing. His father let Darius's uneasiness fill the silence and said nothing. They stared at each other, wishing the other would speak, yet there was nothing. They sat in silence. The phone vibrated in his father's pocket, and because of the silence, Darius could hear it. His father answered the line. Hello? His eyes never left his son's. Yes, I understand, and I'll be right there, his father said, hanging up the phone without saying bye or letting his eyes leave his son's. Darius stood still. He felt that if he made no sudden movements, his father may forget he was there, but it only caused him to stare at him harder. Well, his dad said, we had an agreement, and from your silence, I can tell that you haven't kept it. Darius swallowed. That's true, sir. I was headed to the park, but then I thought it would be easier to just hang out here in case you needed something. His father smirked. That wasn't the deal. And whenever I need something, you're never around. His father closed his eyes and exhaled. He walked towards the truck, and without turning his head, he said, be true to your word, Darius. Darius looked down at the gravel and did not raise his head again until he no longer heard the truck. When Darius arrived back home, he sat on the porch steps because he wanted his father to see him. He wanted him to see his whole face, the stingy, the puffiness, his lip that felt like a bubble that needed to be burst. He could taste the blood dripping into his mouth, and he let the blood swirl with his spit. He refused to swallow. He wanted his father to have the full effect. He knew this would happen. He closed his eyes and the sun again shined through his lids, but there was no joy there. He should have stayed home and enjoyed his peace. But his dad wanted him to be normal, to fit into a world he simply did not belong. He realized he was never going to be the son he was expected to be. For him, he was not going to have the basketball games, the friends he hung out with, or the Sundays watching football with his dads. No, he tried, and each time it seemed to get worse and worse, and his dad kept throwing him out to the world to get hurt. He did not know how long he sat there, but his muscles were tight, and when he heard the truck pull up, he focused on the driver's seat and tried to find his dad's eyes. When their eyes met, Darius could see no emotions from his father. His dad stepped out of the truck and said nothing. Darius felt a rage like he had never felt before rise in him, and he had no idea how to control it. His dad walked right past him. He didn't know what to do in that moment at all. His dad had saw his bruises and it didn't bother him in the least. He offered no comfort, no love, nothing at all. Darius jumped up and pulled the door, which with such force it hit the back of the wall and swung back on and hit his heel. His eyes darted around, and when he saw the light in the kitchen, he swiftly walked that way. In his mind, he knew what he was going to say, everything he ever wanted to say in this moment. He had already been terrorized and beaten up by the local boys. Insult would be par for the course at this point. When he got to the kitchen doorway, he stood still. He was staring at his dad's back and started to tremble. His father poured tea and then replaced the pitcher in the fridge without turning. He said, "Have a seat, Darius." Darius stood still. His pride wouldn't allow him to follow the directions. He braced himself for his father's temper from his disobedient behavior, but instead, there was only silence. His dad reached into the cupboard and pulled out another glass, rinsed it, put ice all the way to the top, and they sat in silence. The noise of the kitchen seemed to be having a whole conversation. The clock ticked, the dishwasher hummed, and the ice maker rumbled. Darius couldn't think of one thing to say, but he knew he wanted to attack, to release all of this onto the person who had forced him to give up his perfect day to walk into danger. He looked at his father and saw that his eyes still looked straight. Wow, he thought, he was such a disgrace to his father that his father felt he no longer even warranted eye contact. This thought filled his chest and hollowed it out. His father's phone rang, and no movement was made. His father's gaze stayed straight ahead, and he made no movement for the phone, even when it rang multiple times. Darius had never seen this before. Normally, when the phone rang, it was answered immediately. He heard his father exhale, and the sound filled the room. "Darius," his father said, "you simply cannot fit in." He knew it. Darius knew it. His father was now voicing what he knew all along. He knew his father hated him, and this was proof. A tear filled Darius's eye, and it fell before he could stop it. He dared not look up, but he could feel his dad staring at him. Darius could hear his heart in his ears because the pain felt like it could escape his body, and there was nothing he could do. More tears fell, and his dad said nothing. Darius laid his head on the table and let the tears fall. He wished they were silent, but they weren't. They took his breath away and he was gasping for air. His shoulders shook and snot ran from his nose, but he couldn't stop. He didn't hear his father make one movement, say one word, and the pain buried itself deeper in his body. When he had cried for what seemed like an eternity, and he was weak from the energy it had taken from him, he continued to lay his head in his folded arms. Still there was silence. He wanted his dad to get up and do something, but he didn't. After an eternity, Darius lifted his head because his curiosity got the better of him. He looked up and his dad's eyes stared back at him. It was not emotional or angry, it was just a stare. Darius knew he should get up and grab a napkin or even wipe his face on his sleeve, but he didn't. There was something in the air. So he looked at his dad and he said, "Sorry." His dad's eyes changed and he exhaled again. "Darius, I don't know how to do this." Darius opened his mouth and his father raised his hand slightly to silence him. He continued, "I don't know much. I know life is not meant to be lived alone. You could change yourself to blend in with other people, and that may be easier in this moment. It would be easier for you, but you would have to be a shadow of yourself, and that can be harder. It's a hard choice, but each person has to decide. I'll tell you the easier choice depends on how you see your life. Many people find their current easy is a later hard. What I can tell you is that it's more than money and power. Peace is what people are truly after. You have people right now who could buy this whole town and not put a dent in their wallet, but can't sleep more than 30 minutes because they don't have peace. Whatever decisions you make, they're yours. And though it hurts my heart to not make decisions for you, I can't live in your decisions. They won't fit me. Hell, half of my own decisions don't fit me. And I've had to change and suffer through that. You, Darius, are the sun. The sun can't hide itself, and neither can you. The sun must shine. However, in its brightness, it forces others to notice themselves in ways they're not ready. I'm not the sun, so I can't show you how to do it. But I know if I let you hide it, it'll destroy you. The same way there are those who detest the sun, there's others who crave its light. It helps them grow and makes the sun shine even more. I know you'll find those people, but you have to try. Though it's easier to be alone, you have to try to find your tribe. His father looked directly at him and didn't blink. Darius looked at his father and exhaled. He didn't know what to say or think, and then he looked at the wall across from him. He closed his eyes, and though it hurt, he kept them closed. He heard a movement but was too tired to even try to figure out what was going on. He felt coldness in his hand. "Make sure you put this on your eye," Darius said. He opened his eyes and looked at his dad. His dad turned and left the room. Darius closed his eyes once again, and he felt himself heat from the inside out. Thank you.
Thank you, IJ. Your first story, I was taking notes, but I was too riveted to like even write anything down the second. I think probably all of us felt that way. We were in absolute suspense. So that was, and I can't imagine you live with this on your wall and think these thoughts. It's amazing. Really lovely to have such a great new, former Seattle Texan voice with us tonight. So I hope you will not be a stranger. Love to hear more of your stories.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bob Reeves, if you want to unmute. Say
Hi.
hello. Okay, our second open mic.
I have a prose poem and one of the other kind. This is called Hand. Things are moving in a wind, the frilly edge of a sun canopy, down-hung fronds of tree limbs, and a woman's hand is moving in a dark SUV, and I can't tell the difference between these movings. The SUV comes forward without starting, must have been running already, and I see it contains at least 4 women, the near one in the back seat with a laughing face turned to my door. I think I must be far enough back in dark now that I can't be seen, as she was when I stood in the door and saw the one in the driver's seat move her hand, possibly waving at me, I suppose now. Even when I knew what it was, the dull trace behind the windshield, there was still an instant of serious wonder whether the wind moved it. And the moral of that is anything can be a poem. This one is called Simplify. We have to come upon the sleep of the animals before men and women's sleep can be available to us. Sleep, not a relinquishment, but a gathering in the slots of sun between high shadows. We wasted our yells on the wind, which is never over. Our feet are shaped to its sand. We wanted the stranger gone, who stood up too straight, whose smile was too jumbled. We should have kept a table for him. He is the tomorrow we escaped, when death is just the next room gleaming, and breath is forgotten and forgotten. The mystery that was our blood runs down the insides of our ears. We will have to come upon the sleep of the animals before anyone can imagine the sleep of angels. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob is going to be joining us as a featured reader just next month for our April reading, which, as Marta pointed out, Poetry Month is coming. Welcome. All right, I'm going to invite our next, if you're ready, I'm going to invite our other open mic reader, Jesse Minkert, to unmute.
History writes itself in chocolate smudges above an upper lip that twists in a grimace focused on the camera, lashlets like eyes like paper cuts. History has disappeared from the catalog of grief the instant we fall asleep, but we'd rather lie awake, flip through the pages, shop for accessories to misery, ever alert for bargains or further wounded rapture, many styles from which to choose, opportunities for a shudder of remorse. Each choice tries to break our will to go on. Before I lie still, I'd like to see the Martian sun rise over the crest of Olympus Mons. The weather is better there than here. Years have more days, lots of parking, not ready for immigration. We'll have to carry much of here along with us. But I doubt I'll get an invitation. So much history has sped away beyond any chance to grasp. History is slippery as ice on a street, something at which to stare when vision fades. You loosen the clasp around your waist. What remains of us today? What carries us toward our shadows beneath the blanket? Each time I turn to you, I see that hesitation, that armor. Every time you turn to me, what do you hear? What lies do you think I tell? We don't dare turn to face our wounds, our crimes. We wait. We hope to forget. That might take a while. You pull open the blinds, allow in the winter's sun, a beam of crystalline dusk across the carpet, desks and chairs fashioned from visions of warmer suns, finished with our earnest heat, still wrapped inside our guarded layers like a flickering hearth, like my trembling hand. It reaches out, it hesitates an inch away from your shoulder. Apprehension hovers in what, in that instant's delay, and I ask, is this acceptable? And you ask, should it be?
Thank you. It's good to have you back.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to this for a while, as you well know.
We all have. All right. Stephanie is someone that I met at Cancer Lifeline, but as with many of the people who come to me at Writing for the Moment, They are clearly already quite an accomplished writer. Stephanie lives in Snohomish County with their spouse. They write and paint for pleasure and to gain a deeper understanding in themselves. Since being diagnosed with breast cancer on June 17th, 2022, they have done a daily painting and blog post about their experience of having cancer. These paintings and blog posts are becoming a 12 comic book series about Stephanie's experience of cancer. The books are available under the title The Cancer Chronicles, a cartoon memoir. Stephanie also works as a life coach specializing in issues related to gender, sandwich generation, family violence, dementia, illness, self-love, grief, and getting unstuck in life. They accept commissions for custom doodle portraits, which you'll understand all the better when you see their work. And they have a website called sacred-self.com. Welcome, Stephanie.
And thank you, Peggy, for picking me to be one of the writers reading today. I'm honored to be here. I'm not trained in art or poetry. This is just, I just do what comes naturally. And most of what I'm going to show you today is about my experience with cancer, but this is a piece that I did prior to being diagnosed, so just so you could get a feel for who I've been all along. So this one is called Conversations with the Tree Mirror. Who are you? A young one. What are you? I am. The rest is story. What do you do? I grow. Next slide, please, Rob. When I was diagnosed, I was buried under a huge mountain of pain. That's the part on the left side of the image. And I decided to art my way through this experience. Here you can see that I've added a T with a paintbrush and transformed pain into paint. And you can see that I've blossomed. Next slide, please. I realized during this journey that there was no point in arguing with reality. I always came away beat up and reality was unfazed. Next slide, please. So I chose to ask myself this question: how is this happening for me rather than to me? Next slide, please. Instead of fighting with cancer, I chose to make cancer into my muse. And that's when I really started learning to paint and write poetry so I could process this experience. And this painting, I'm the painting figure, and the crab represents cancer. And the marigolds are my symbol for hope. These next slides will be some of my poems and artwork. Next slide, please. This one is called I Apprentice Myself to Myself. I apprentice myself to myself. Learn who I am. Learn to be fully me from me. Discover me. Understand me. Know me. Uncover me. Search for the lost bits of me. What parts of me are desiccated and no longer belong to me? What can I release? How can I uncover me? How can I chip away at what does not belong to me? What was never me? Unvarnish myself from the lacquer painted onto me by others. Unweight me. Rise to the surface where I can breathe. Swim according to my whim. Rest. Float. Drift. Be. Next slide, please. This is the painting I did the morning that I had a bilateral mastectomy or breast amputations. And you can see the surgeon is leading the crab away and I'm saying goodbye and the crab is saying goodbye. And this poem is my experience of waking up after the surgery. It's called Postoperative Awakening. I become aware of myself. I am waking. I sense someone to my left. I open my eyes. My body feels like it's missing. My brain feels hazy. I'm trying to figure it out. There's a touch on my left hand. There's a voice in my left ear. I hear her say, "You're done." I hear myself say, "Are my breasts gone?" She confirms that they are gone. I feel my eyes well up with tears. My chest rises and falls as I cry. I feel tears sliding into my ears. Some slide down my cheeks and neck. I am aware of my breasts being gone forever. I feel a squeeze of my left hand. I can't move yet. I can't squeeze back. All I can do is grieve my loss and cry. Just breathe and cry and feel. My breasts have been sent to pathology. I'm here on this journey. We will never be reunited. Next slide, please. This is a poem called Tough and Tender. And the image is me painting my incisions with comfort and love, and that's the cover of that other mastectomy journal. Tough and tender. This life of having cancer is tough. I strive to remain tender. My incisions are tender. I borrow courage to be tough while I heal. Being dependent on others is tough. Vulnerably asking for help feels tender. My body is tender. The exercises are tough but necessary to recover. My incapacity has been tough for those who love me, and still they are tender with me. My heart is tender, watching as those I love have a tough time alongside me. My soul is tough while my body is tender. Tough and tender are superpowers. Next slide, please. This one is called Within and Among the Everything. The world is what I wanted. I wanted connection with people. I wanted to love. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to smell the pine trees and the lilacs and the lilies. I wanted to taste the cherries. I wanted to hear the music. I wanted to feel the resonance in my chest. I wanted to feel the heartbeat against my ear. I wanted to hold the tiny being that came through me. I wanted to love her fully. I wanted to create safety for her. I wanted her to have what I never had. I wanted her to know how totally worthy she was just from the start. I wanted her to know how lovable she was just from the start. I wanted her to know how purely good she was just from the start. I wanted her to know these things were inherent in her nature and that she didn't need to do anything to be good or worthy or lovable. She simply has been good, worthy, lovable from the moment of her existence. Who am I talking about? Is this about Sarah or is this about me? Does then me know it? Does now me know it? How can I be sure to remember this vital information? I don't want to forget it. It's been trained out of me for 5.5 decades. I'm in training now to remember. Sarah knows at least to some degree. I think I know now, at least to some degree too. When I hear the hum of the hummingbird, I feel connected to myself and to the everything that I am among and within. When I smell the pine needles and hear a river flowing, I am connected and among the everything. Next slide, please. This poem is called I Don't Want to Die, and you can see the painting as me wearing cancer-colored glasses. For many years, I did want to die. I was despair personified. I changed my mind when my daughter was born. She's now 27 years old. I'm glad I lived. I have cancer. Living and dying are now beyond my control. Surprisingly, living with cancer has healed me. Suddenly, I can see clearly through cancer-colored glasses what I value. I set and maintain healthy boundaries. I make good decisions and find new depths of compassion in my soul. My healing allows me to help heal the world. Next slide, please. And this is a painting I did of healing myself, also healing the world. Next slide, please. This one is called Vulnerability on the Autumn Equinox. All summer long, I chose life, filled with wonder, filled with support, filled with art, filled with writing, filled with tears, filled with garden flowers. Also, a drudgery of tests, of results, of surgery, of pain, of fear, of loss. My abundant vulnerability and love make the world sing. I am only present when I am experiencing the extraordinary, ordinary complexity of life. Next slide, please. And this one is called Until Recently, and it's meant to look like the vertebrae of the spine being bent under the weight. Until recently, I thought, if it's going to get done, I must do it myself. Until recently, I was unaware that this is actually a trauma response. Until recently, I was unwilling to ask anyone to help. Until recently, I didn't allow others to help me even when they offered. Until recently, I clung to ancient patterns that no longer served me. Until recently, when I decided to accept and receive help. And the picture is me asking the universe for help and saying I'm open to possibilities. Next slide, please. This is a collage that I made at Cancer Lifeline, and it's called Transmutation. And then I wrote this poem to go with it. Tears rush from my eyes like raging waterfalls. What was restrained has finally burst forth. Grief at the loss of parts of my body. What am I without these parts? Grief at the loss of my energy. What am I without it? Simply being without doing. So much grief everywhere inside me, raging grief. I crave transmutation. The magical incantation. Grief, I hear you. Grief, I feel you. Grief, I embrace you. Grief, I love you. The magic potion, my many tears, absorbent tissues, the sounds I make. The actions, loving myself as I am now, releasing the version of myself that no longer is. The process is chaos, but necessary to get to peace. So many repetitions of this cycle. They must all be included in the spell to produce the desired transmutation and find peace. Next slide, please. This one is a poem that I wrote because having cancer has changed my perspective a bit. It's called Precious Neighbor. In my enduring dreams, I can remember what I sometimes forget in my brief waking life. These eternal stones and trees in the front garden and in the woods, they are my precious neighbors. The loamy soil and the weeds and the worms it contains are also my precious neighbors. The humming, buzzing, rushing birds, insects, and rivers are my precious neighbors. A fly that dances in circles near my feet. Hello, precious neighbor. The erratic driver risking all of our lives. This too is my precious neighbor. The wounded souls among us now and who were and who will be are our precious neighbors. The people who have harmed me knowingly or unknowingly, they too are my precious neighbors. The people with different values from me who help me clarify what I value, they are my precious neighbors. My perfect, flawed, sometimes unintentionally harm-causing and still loving self, I too am a precious neighbor. Okay, next slide, please. And this poem is called Strength. I feel strongest when I'm vulnerably being my authentic self. That means feeling all my feelings without hiding or numbing. That means letting laughter and tears flow. That means being gender expansive and embracing my feminine and my masculine. That means opening myself up for connection with myself and others. That means reaching out for others when I am in need and when they are in need. That means loving myself exactly as I am. That means recognizing that I have a good body. That means loving my scars from up close and my missing parts from afar. That means feeding my soul with oceans, rivers, stones, forests, flowers, earth, sky, and stars. That means taking time out to enjoy things for the sheer pleasure of it. That means indulging in music, color, painting, chocolate, and fuzzy things. That means resting when and how I need to. That means embracing my dormant periods as I grow. That means leading with kindness. Next slide, please. I'm going to finish up with this last painting of marigolds. They've become my symbol of hope, as I mentioned. And it comes from the catchphrase of Sonny Kapoor, the character in the movie The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel. He says, everything will be all right in the end. If it's not yet all right, it's not yet the end. And there's my website. But how appropriate that I end with that, considering the technical difficulties that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Isn't that amazing to be able to illustrate as you go? What an inspiration from all of you. All right, I'm going to turn off the recording so we can chat. Thank you all for being part of this evening.